Meeting, we are here for our budget hearing, and I'd like to introduce Michelle Brown, who is going to present the budget hearing to us this evening. Once she is done presenting, we'll take questions from our community that they may have regarding the budget, and then we will move into our board meeting at 6:30 p.m. in which the board will have an opportunity to ask questions around budget, and then we'll be voting to adopt the budget. Okay, thank you. You're all set. Let me move this little guy. Thank you. Everyone has a copy of our budget hearing presentation, starting out with our school board, district administration, staff, the budget publication notice that was in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and then North Shore Now. And then we'll go into information on what our funds are. The district uses funds 10, 21, 27, 38, 46, 50, and 80. They each have a specific purpose. Fund 10 is our general fund, and it's used to account for financial transactions for current operations and instruction. Fund 21 is our special revenue fund, and we use this to account for student activities and clubs as well as gifts and donations. Fund 27 is our special education fund. Fund 38 is for non-referendum debt service. And Fund 46 is our long-term capital improvement fund. This is to fund projects approved by the board and listed on a capital improvement plan. That fund had a 5-year window once it was started before it could be used, so we're still waiting on that. Fund 50 is our food service fund used for the transactions related to the school food service program. And then Fund 80 is our community service fund. It's used to account for activities open to the community. It's not showing up.
Do I click on this?
No, there's actually supposed to be a timeline here. We'll go by, everyone has a presentation? Okay.
If you click in the middle, does it magically appear?
Yeah.
Is it possible to upload this presentation that we need to have? So we could like click on it.
Which one?
This actual, the one we're looking at right now. It's not on Word Docs. Do we have anyone online? I'm just thinking.
No one online.
There's no one online. Okay. We've got it then. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a timeline. November through April, we were working on budget work, putting together the individual budgets and salaries as the board approved, insurance benefits and getting increases, finding out those factors. May 21st, the board approved the 25-26 preliminary budget. June 18th, that's today, we're having the budget hearing. And then the board approval of the preliminary budget at the board meeting. Then September 19th, we will have the third Friday pupil count and summer school membership report. Those numbers will be known and those play into determining our final revenues. October 1st, Wisconsin Department of Revenue gives us our tax apportionment values. They certify those. October 15th, the Department of Public Instruction certifies our general aids. October 15th also, we received the private school voucher aid amounts. And then October 29th is set for the board to adopt the final budget and set the tax levy. And attached to that slide, which this will be uploaded, then that is our updated budget calendar, and that I believe is in Board Docs. So in forming our budget, we need to determine our revenues. The revenue limit is the main driver of the majority of our revenues, and that determines the amount we could raise between tax levy and general aid. And then we have state aid for other purposes, state and federal grants, fees, rentals, and other miscellaneous revenues. This budget was built on, the assumption that. There we go, great. Yeah. Okay. Built on the assumption, that our September FTE would be 960. Don't know. Yeah. 40% of our summer school FTE goes towards our numbers, our membership numbers for our aid and our revenue limit. The per pupil revenue limit increase, the assumption is $325 increase. Per pupil categorical aid, $742. Equalization aid, this is much higher than previous years. It's estimated to be $1,530,651. Federal grants, currently projecting no change. 3% increase in property values. Lease agreements, Good Hope increases to cover utilities and routine maintenance, and those will be out by the end of the month. Or July 1st. No change in Fund 27 capital aid. And then the resident counts used in the revenue limit calculation. And I put several fiscal years here so you can see. The September FTE, this is used in the revenue limit. Current 24-25 years, 960, and projecting that same 960 for September. 40% of summer school FTE, projecting 8, although this says that nothing as a typo. Should be 8. Special needs vouchers. This current year, we had 2 and projecting that we will have 2, which we could see a different number this fall, and that's something that the DPI puts on our revenue limit. And then the 3-year average used in the revenue limit, for 25-26, we're looking at 945. And then the revenue limit calculation, that this is how the revenue limit is determined. The resident membership number of 945, and that's that 3-year average, current 3-year average. The per pupil, per dollar amount, $13,613. And then one-time revenue limits, this includes the 4.5 million that the taxpayers approved. And then also some other non-reoccurring for the voucher programs. Then ongoing recurring, we have none. And then total revenue limit looking at $18,185,911. So this next slide shows the allowable limited revenue that we just showed, the $18,185,911. And then of that amount, we take out subtract that general aid, because what we're trying to arrive at is what is our tax levy going to be. So we're going to get that 1.5 million. And then exempt computer aid, $311,719, exempt personal property aid, $209,944. And then total aid to be used in computation is the $2,052,314. So of that revenue limit, that's how much are coming from those different aids. And the remaining amount is what is left to that we're gonna levy for. We have our Fund 38 levy, which is $1,085,513, and then the balance of that is what we can levy in Fund 10, and that will be projected to be $15,048,084. The next slide is showing the drastic increase in our revenue limit, the aid, equalization aid as a percentage of the levy. In the current year and the previous year, it was 1%, and it's projected to go up to 8%. And then Fund 10 general fund, this is just a very it's very concise, very summarized, broken. Beginning fund balance projected to be, this is still unaudited, the year's not over, but projected to be $5,927,785. Revenues of $19,158,335, and then expenditures of $19,438,099. For an ending fund balance, June 30th, 2026 of $5,648,021. The revenue and expenditure comparison, shows fund 10 revenues, fund 10 expenditures, and then the fund balance. You see 23-24. The revenues lower than our expenditures by quite a bit. And then 24-25, we had the state trust fund loan, and then also the operational referendums on there. So higher than our expenditures, so that we could be using those in future years. And then you see 25-26, where they're almost even. Fund 10 expenditures are slightly higher than 10 revenues. And still ending the year with a fund balance. This chart is just a breakout of the revenue by source, property tax. And I apologize for the color on the printouts, not as clear. Property tax is the main piece, high poverty aid, per pupil categorical aid, general aid, and computer and personal property aid, and then state AGR aid. The district here, the majority of our revenues are property taxes, and then per pupil categorical aid, that's an amount that is $742, and then also our general aid, equalization aid, and that's increasing. Then our expenditures by object, the majority of our expenditures, the biggest percentage is on salary and benefits. And then other expenditures here broken out in which are open enrollment, our transfers. We don't have a transfer to Fund 46, but it's on the chart, it's consistent. Transfer to Fund 27, in vouchers, all other transfers, non-capital and capital objects, transfers to Fund 50, and all other expenditures. So the majority of our budget is total salary and benefits. And then the next biggest piece is the transfer to Fund 27 of our general fund budget. Fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, our 23-24 year, we were below. We did not have a fund balance. We ended the year negative. The 24-25 years projected to end with fund balance at 31.03% of expenditures, and then our 25-26 budget is expected to end at 29.06% of expenditures. This slide shows the preliminary budget of the 23-24 year, the 24-25 year, and then our budget year, showing those factors we talked about, the September FTE, the per pupil increase, per pupil categorical aid, the tip out equalized valuation growth. The budget was projected at 3% increase in property values. Fund 10 revenues for the 25-26 year at the $19,158,335. Fund 10 expenditures, $19,438,099, with a deficit of $279,764, and an ending fund balance of the $5,648,021. Fund balance being at 29.06% of expenditures. Levy projection, it would, with this budget right now, would be $16,133,597. That's a decrease of 12.64% from last year. And the mill rate would be with the 3% increase in this tax levy would be $6.42. Non-reoccurring referendum is 4.5 million. And then the average tax impact on $100,000 home is $642. This is showing the all funds tax levy. And the piece that is the general fund tax levy and then the non-referendum debt tax levy. Those combined. We're looking at a mill rate of $6.42, and you see the other 2 years and then the total of those levies. Special Projects Fund, this is the one used for clubs and gifts and donations. Beginning fund balance of $18,191, revenue $45,000, expenses $45,000 for an ending fund balance of $18,191. Special Education Fund, this fund is not allowed to have a fund balance, negative or positive, so revenues and expenditures must match. So whatever's not brought in through other Fund 27 revenues is a transfer from Fund 10. This budget would have revenues of $4,552,344 and matching expenditures. The budget would include a transfer from the general fund of $2,834,360. And then this is showing the revenues by source in Fund 27. The main piece of Fund 27 revenues is the transfer from the general fund. Looking at $2,846,561, federal revenues of $317,000, and this includes IDEA grant and also Medicaid reimbursements. And then special education state aid, this is the kind of local aid of $1,388,783. The Fund 27 expenditures by object, kind of. The major portion of this is the total salary and benefits. And then the next highest expense is specialized transportation, and then we have other services. Fund 38 non-referendum debt had a beginning fund balance of $45,577, revenues of $1,085,838, and expenses of $1,087,275 for an ending fund balance of $43,140. And then this is showing a breakdown of the non-referendum debt service, what those obligations are that the district has, what the balance was July 1st or will be July 1st, 2025, the fiscal year 26 payments, and then what the balance it will be June 30th, 2026. So we have the general obligation bonds of $1,650,000. That currently has a outstanding balance of $630,000. There'll be payments of $150,000 during the fiscal year 2026. And then the balance would be $480,000 at year end. State trust fund note. This was taken out in 2020. That has a balance of $178,773 fiscal year payments. And when I say payments, it should be the principal payment on that because there is interest of $33,843, and then a balance of $144,930. The state trust fund to finance operations of $6 million starting July 1st balance, and then fiscal year 26 payment $522,271, and then a principal balance of $5,477,729. And then the long-term capital improvement, beginning balance of $219,586. Revenue projections of $6,500. Ending fund balance, no expenditures because we're still not able to use that fund until 2027. Ending fund balance, $226,086. Then our food service, looking at revenues of starting the year with a zero fund balance, we had some repairs and such, so. Not expected to have a balance there. Revenues of $471,612 and expenditures matching, for an ending fund balance. Zero. And then our Fund 80 community service, beginning fund balance of $2,234,878. Revenue projections of $365,000. And these are increases from the current, and I know the previous budget had revenues of 400,000, but that's not what actual revenues were. So this is kind of going back to actual revenues and then that increase to help pay for utilities and maintenance, ongoing maintenance. Expenses of $450,000. And then ending fund balance of $2,149,055. The all funds expense is $26,045,154. And then out of this, the transfer to Fund 27, $2,834,360, leaving a net expense of $23,210,794. And then our certified property values come into play in the budget when we are setting our levy and what that mill rate will be. So, and it also is a factor in determining our equalization aid from the state. They look at our property values. So showing the city of Glendale, what the levy has been each year for since 22-23. And then the 25-26 projected amount, which would be, oh, I'm sorry, not levy amount, these are the property values. So $2,441,909,068. And then the property value, certified property values in the village of River Hills is $70,704,760. Then this is showing the tip out tax apportionment value, how that has changed in the last several years. And last year it decreased. And in the middle there, you see the minus 0.31%, and then this budget is projected that we would have a 3% increase in property value. And then again, the all funds tax levy of $16,133,997. The general fund tax levy of that, $15,048,084, and then the non-referendum debt tax levy of $1,085,513. And then this slide is showing the preliminary budget, the historical 23-24 year, the current year, 24-25, the budget year 25-26, and then just a little preview of 26-27. Expecting that September membership to stay the same. Now I'll have to find out, yeah, the 948. The per pupil, and one of the reasons too is we're dropping off 8th graders who the 8th grade class had, I think, 14 or 15 open enrolled in students. So that kind of was subtracted from our revenue, our FTE. So if we figure the same class sizes, yet resident students, this increases. So that's where that increase is coming from. And then this is just a summary showing the revenues, expenditures, the deficit, fund balance, at percentage of fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, and then the total school-based tax levy. Projections for next year, still ending the year with a fund balance, although very small, taking it down to 3% if all things were to stay the same. And also a major decrease in the total school-based tax levy. Because the 4.5 million referendum is falling off, this is the last year getting money for that. Questions? Anything else?
No
Oh.
visitors online. Oh, no.
That's the stuff.
This would be an opportunity for our three visitors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To ask any questions or make any comments.
yeah, what, I apologize, I thought I had the last page, but I didn't. So, future pieces of this budget. So tonight, budget hearing, board approval of the preliminary 25-26 budget. And then September 19th is when we get those, it doesn't show. The third Friday pupil count in the summer, membership, summer school membership. And then October 1st, the Department of Revenue tax apportionment values. And then on the 15th, from the GPI, we get certification of dental aids, private school voucher aid amounts. And then October 29th, the board will adopt the final budget and tax levy. And then once I upload this presentation, then we will also, you'll have access to those budget documents that were used. And also attached to the board meeting and the budget hearing. Is the budget and adoption format as well. Now I'll open questions.
You're gonna hear this tonight.
I'm waiting on the state budget to pass before I ask any school
That's fair.
questions.
That's fair. Actually, hold on, hold on. All right. I'd like to say thank you to Michelle for your hard work and preparation around, looking at all of these components and really forecasting out what is needed and the hard work that you put in to make sure that we're falling into alignment. So thank you for that. Thank you. Very clear.
Thank you, Michelle.
Nice job with the graphics.
Oh, this public hearing is adjourned.
You have 30 minutes.
Nice. Brilliant.
Okay.
Did you time that? Perfect.
No.
Right, so we'll run into it. Just gonna run into it. Are we offline now for a moment? We're still online, we're just moving straight.
I have some in my first if you want.
I can grab some. Jump quick. Will these be two separate recordings though, right? You'll just be able to split them between.
I mean, I can, if that's what you want.
There are questions.
They were posted separately, so one has to be posted to the hearing item in board docs.
Okay,
And then what's coming next has to be posted to the,
Or you could post them in both places.
or you can post
And
them.
do a marker of minutes, like say, this meeting started at this time.
okay.
Saying a budget or something like that. Yeah, it's in her.
So whatever works for you.
6:30 to do it.
All right, so I'm gonna put all this aside. And on to our next regular board meeting, we're ready. I will call this meeting to order. This is a June 18th meeting of the Glendale-River Hills School Board. We're beginning at 6:30 today, post budget hearing. We'll start with a roll call. Chris Robinson. Here. Katie Aplis.
Here.
Karen Cromwell.
Here.
Daniel Bailey.
Here.
Carla Pennington Cross is here. We are all present. At this time, you may stand to recite the pledge of allegiance if you wish.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Item 1D, agenda approval.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Danielle Bailey, second by Karen Cromwell to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Stay. All right, the agenda is approved. 1E, approval of board meeting minutes for June 4.
I move to approve June 4, 2025 meeting minutes as attached to the agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion or comments? I have one suggestion that I just noticed as I was going through them. On item 4B, discussion of the draft of the employee handbook. Are you all comfortable with adding to that? Because it was clear that Anna gave us until June 18th to provide comments. I would like to add that since it was a very clear deadline for us. Which I missed, but that's why it should be in here to remind me. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Would you like me to grant an extension?
Like 2 days would be amazing.
Okay.
Until Friday, say.
So
It wasn't an ask, it was just an acknowledgement.
I
that
thought that's just a passive aggressive yells.
No, it was not a cry for help. I am working really hard to try to focus on deadlines and make sure I'm paying attention, so it's good to have them in the minutes.
Today's grace.
All right, so the motion is by Danielle Bailey, second by Katie Avalos to approve the minutes as revised per Carla's suggestion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Then moving on to meeting grounding, item 1F.
Okay, I'm gonna do the grounding and we focus on our budget, 'cause that's the main thing that we are charged with tonight as a board. And Michelle and our admin team have diligently prepared the budget, thoughtfully presented it to us at our last meeting, to the community tonight at our budget hearing. So as we receive and review it again soon, I want to center us in what this budget represents or what I think it represents, because it's more than numbers, it's more than state funding or a lack thereof, it's more than our local tax dollars, which we are grateful for. And salaries, which we all wish would keep up with inflation at a minimum, right? At a micro level, it is those things, but at a macro level, it also represents our community's values and its overwhelming support for the thing that we all care about most. The thing that brings us back here every other week and sometimes more, and that's our students. They're the reason that we as a board volunteered to sit here, to act as ambassadors for and bridges to and between our community for the school district. So, and I shudder to think about the very different conversation we could be having here tonight around next year's budget if our community had not stepped up, if our admin had not stepped up, our board had not stepped up, our teachers had not stepped up, or when our students needed us most these last couple of years, and probably handful before that. So I found this quote, a guy I never heard of. I think he's a leader in business innovation, but I really like this quote, which is community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter. So as we review the budget tonight, I invite us to do so in a way that builds upon the confidence our community entrusted to us when they voted us into office, when they voted yes on our last referendum, and let us continue to show them their support was warranted, that our values are in alignment, and let our actions together tonight continue to strengthen our community and what it means to be a part of this school district. That's it. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 2A, public comments. At this time, visitors may speak on any non-agenda item you wish. I see shaking heads of no, and no one is online still.
No, we have 3.
Oh, okay, anyone wish to comment?
I see no comments.
All right.
No hands raised.
We have a very relatively focused agenda tonight. Nothing under the strategic pillars of whole child growth and success and empowered community. Though life is a seamless web, everything relates to everything. Moving on to item 5A, exceptional staff and leadership and the superintendent report.
All right, so I would like to update the board on the Shaping the Future Together, Empowering Success for Glendale-River Hills that we had our May 28th session. So in that facilitation of that meeting, the session focused on envisioning the future of student programming and operational planning for across the district. So one of the key pieces that we did within that meeting is had an opportunity for our participants to take a look at varied school models and look at what possibilities are. And then we also looked at sort of what it means to step into Nicolay by reviewing some of their information about the curriculum and offerings that they have. And we thought about some of those essential skills for graduating 8th grade students. So there was some opportunity for us to kind of dream about what could be and how we are preparing our students there. Then participants spent time auditing and recommending programs for our students early childhood through 8th grade. And some of the key areas that came up were our clubs, our after school activities, our academic resource center and music that they feel are important that we already do in terms of supporting essential skill development for our students. There were recommendations to strengthen programming and by expanding STEM, world languages into the elementary level, increased emphasis on science and social studies at the elementary level, civics, financial literacy, home economics, health, integrated social emotional learning, and school-wide enrichment opportunities for students. So those are some of the key areas, was really how do we continue to build out some of those programs to reach more or develop what doesn't exist for our students in those areas. Some operational strengths were that Glen Hills and Parkway are located close to green spaces. They have proximity to parks, school libraries. Our Glen Hills pool is something that's an asset to us. Our Glen Hills Genius Lab, our commons and our stage area, Parkway's natural light, and then also Parkway's playground and the enhanced program opportunities for grades 4 through 5 by having them in the middle school building. However, there was also on the converse side of that, the idea that grades 4 and 5 should probably remain in an elementary setting for their developmental purposes. So having access to those programs is exciting, but maybe not best served in a middle school setting. The need for more natural light at Glen Hills, air conditioning at Parkway, Good Hope, just kind of the acknowledgement that it's only used for non-school purposes at that point, because some community members weren't fully aware of that. There's a need for full day 4K programming in our community, being more ADA accessible. The disruptive classroom layouts at Glen Hills due to the lack of solid and true walls. So having distractions and walk-through spaces. The fact that there's such separation between music and allied arts from the core academics at Glen Hills. And then also inefficient pick up and drop off procedures that maybe don't necessarily enhance family engagement. Underutilized classrooms at Glen Hills, lack of breakout spaces and common spaces for students. The need for more embedded professional learning for new staff. Greater student choice in world language in music and allied arts, and then consistent communication and expectations across grade levels. So those are some of the areas of needs that were identified within that programming. I feel like this provided really valuable input on what matters in our community. I will continue to seek additional input and would like to spend time in our next session with people to just have an opportunity to really walk through and tour our buildings and have an opportunity to see our spaces and what they look like and where some of those areas of needs are, and continue to engage our community members in the conversations around what they value in education for children in our community. Any questions? I know many of you attended, so thank you.
Go ahead.
I just have a comment. So I want to thank you for the
Yeah.
community engagement. I think the turnout was decent. It was mostly us and staff and maybe like 8 or 10 community members. And I think that kind of turnout is good actually for,
Yeah.
I mean, based on my time here as a board member, like that is a high turnout and that is not, so it's not, that just is a problem, you know, since I've been on the board. But everybody that was there was engaged, and I think having like great insights there that they were sharing. Couple things I didn't think, like I wanted to touch on, but I didn't, like, then, was class sizes. I don't know if there was really like space or time to talk about class sizes and get feedback on that, as well as technology, like in terms of like how little, how much does our community want to see incorporated? And I think that might fit nicely into as you tour educational spaces. So I just wanted to put that on your radar as like something to maybe specifically try to engage people on as you like think about educational spaces. But otherwise, I mean, I think it was great. I'm excited to keep attending and engagement sessions.
I enjoyed it too. It was really good. I enjoyed the videos. That was actually, that, what's the word? It, tickled my fancy and got me thinking about a lot of things. So I wanted to see more of them. So and it was a great cue. It was a great way to cue up thinking of participants in what matters and what schools are thinking about, what schoolhouses think about. So great job.
Could you share those or did you share them?
I will be, once I've delivered this report to the board, I'm gonna put the summary up online and then I'll also share the presentation online like I
That
did
would
the
be
last time.
cool.
It's under the community section
Oh, okay.
of our website, so Diana does a really nice job of taking my presentation and putting it into like a booklet so people can view it.
nice.
So then we'll be able to
We could
click
share
through
it.
to all the videos. Interesting.
Yeah.
Chris, any comments?
No, I thought it was very well done.
Katie?
I'm extra sad I had to miss it, but band came first.
Karin?
Yeah, I would just add, at our table, one of the things that did come out was that there's a strong feeling that there's too much reliance on Chromebooks at the elementary level. And I guess I would wanna add that, because it was a really universal feeling.
I think it's universal at both schools from the feedback that I've received from parents this year, and I think there's a lot of new research and information that is out right now that I think a lot of parents are accessing, and I know many of our teachers have been accessing on sort of the impact of screens on students and their learning and their social abilities and their social emotional well-being. So I think there's a push right now to try to figure out where we strike a better balance with that. So we are responding to that as a staff over the summer because we've heard that throughout the school year.
I just, maybe I missed it, I didn't see that in the.
I didn't put it in there, but I
Okay.
will. I can add it in pretty easily when I do capture my
Yeah.
summary, because I think you're right. I do remember. I don't know that it got jotted down on the
Yeah,
papers.
It might not have.
Right.
But I do remember that conversation
universal
percolating now that
conversation,
you're refreshing my memory.
And to be fair, I only remembered it as we're sitting here talking.
Because I go,
I'm
Yeah.
curious whether students feel the same way too. I'm going a little off here, but I'm guessing if you polled students, you would find that students are starting to feel that way too. That's what I'm starting to observe.
Actually, in my focus groups with middle school students, they wanted less adherence to a no phone policy within our school. And
really?
wanted more access, so
But for the Chromebooks, they liked getting all their learning off the Chromebooks.
no, they like it more hands-on learning, but they
Yeah.
want access to their actual phones, and I think there's a lot, I mean, I think that's where there's like we
Yeah.
have to have
That's a-
engage in conversations around ethics
Yeah.
and what's best for kids, right, around
Yeah.
technology, and I think, you know, as we look forward to potential committees for our board, like looking at having people review AI policy and technology, maybe something we want to involve community members in. And maybe some business professionals, because I think that could give us some really good insights on what use should look like in our schools. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. For touring schools, I don't know if this might fit, but might be interesting to tour or see videos of other K through 8s or other schools that have renovated, or like what different spaces might look like. I don't know if that's touring any of the new renovations around us or just like videos, you know, I don't know. I just think like seeing what's possible there too might be fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Anything else from any board members of the public? Mr. Martin? Please state your name and address for the record.
Wayne Martin, 7275 North Port Washington Road, apartment 1221, Glendale, Wisconsin, 53217. Yeah, for the potential identified areas of improvement, one of them was full day 4K programming, just double checking, is that a kid being in 4K all day or?
I think that the key area is that we have working families and our K4 program is only a half day afternoon, a half day morning program. So having the ability to have your child in a safe place all day long while you're at work is a need within our community, as many of our parents are two-family working parents. We only can get funding from the state for 60% for K4K, so it's about thinking about how do we do that? We're gonna make that offering in creative ways.
Then the embedded professional learning for new staff, is that more an in-service day or is that additional time that need to come in?
I think it was them seeing a need, like as we're starting to move into, like we had some shifting in staff resignations, as we would have people who move into retirement, how do we continue to support our talent pool? Which looks like not only the in-services at the beginning of the year, but ongoing professional development.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anyone else? Anyone online? All right, thank you, Anna. Thank you for the update. Thank you for keeping this work going. Right. Moving on to 5B, staffing changes. 4 resignations, 1 hire.
All right, so based on our board policies, resignation of full-time teachers must be approved by the board, so I'm bringing those forward tonight for the board. In addition to that, the board must also establish the terms of, the superintendent establishes the terms of employment, which I've included in admin content, and the board will be responsible for the approval of employment of any administrators or teachers, so I'm bringing forward also an approval for hiring. So the resignations of Kristen Birmingham, 6th and 7th grade social studies teacher, the resignation of Taylor Dassow as library media specialist, the resignation of Nyasha Timoleon, 6th and 7th grade teacher, and also the resignation of Matthew Nebel, 4th grade teacher. And then we will be making a motion, I would recommend a motion of hiring Jenna Riggins as our middle school math teacher.
Okay, is there a motion?
Do you want to do resignations and?
Yeah, let's do the resignations and hiring separately, but I think we can do all resignations together.
Okay,
Is Mr. Nebel's resignation?
yes, it's NT.
Yep.
It's NT.
NT, it's
I
a.
thought it was Niger.
That's.
I don't see.
It should be.
Oh, it's the Glendale-River Hills School District.
Thank
now.
you. Okay, that's the new, okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, didn't see that. Thank you.
We can do them one at a time if you want, if that's easier.
I can,
Totally up to whoever makes the motion.
I'll do it. I move to approve the resignations of Kristen Birmingham, 6th/7th social studies teacher, Taylor Dassa, library media specialist, Nyasha Timoleon, 6th/7th science teacher, and Matthew Nebel, 4th grade teacher.
Second.
All right, any discussion, Chris? Katie?
My my students have had all 4 of the teachers who are resigning, or them, 3 teachers and Taylor. And it's a big loss. These are a lot of really good people who are losing. I'm sad about it, but good luck to them. It seems like they're all going on to bigger and better things.
Not better, it doesn't get any better than this.
Financially.
Garden,
Just thank you for your time here.
Danielle?
Thank you. Wishing them well.
Yep, ditto. I feel give them our best. Taylor has done a lot for this district, starting with working in admin offices. It's a big loss, but I wish her well, wish her health along with everyone else.
Oh,
All right. There's a motion by Danielle Bailey, second by Corinne Granwell to approve the resignations of Kristen Birmingham, Taylor Dassow, Nyasha Timoleon, and Matthew Nebel. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
the next.
Motion to hire.
Yep, I move to approve the hiring of Jenna Rankins as middle school math teacher.
Second.
All right, give me a second here. Discussion, Katie Avalos, any comments? All right.
She seems very, very qualified. Yeah, I was glad to see this.
Sure.
Danielle?
Nope.
I got nothing. Chris?
Now I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yep.
About
All right, motion by Danielle Bailey, second by Karen Cronwell to approve the hire of Jenna Rangens. I say that, Rangens as middle school math teacher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstained? Welcome to the district, Ms. Rangens. Thanks for joining us. All right, item 5C, employee leave policies, 4432 and 3432.
All right, so I'm bringing back to the board, policies 3432 and 4432 for potential recommendations for revision. Due to board policy 0131.1, indicating that the adoption, modification, repeal, or suspension of a policy should be recorded in the minutes of the board. The revisions that I'm recommending are attached with one other revision that I'd like to recommend. On page. In the policy,
Page 204, are you looking at sick leave at the?
yeah, I'm looking at the sick leave, so the recommendations that I'm making in both policies is that we would grant 12 days for those employees hired on or after July 1st, 2021, and 13 days if hired prior to July 1, 2021 of sick leave. And that that would be a rolling as the first day of employment of each contract year. The carryover of unused sick leave would be that they could carry over up to 720 hours of sick leave, which is an increase for many of our employees from 48 days to 90 days, and for some employees 60 days to 90 days of leave. And so making sure that our staff within our schools can accumulate enough sick leave to cover them should they have a major emergency for long-term disability. Any sick leave that would not be used during employment would not be lost, and it would not be paid out to the employee upon termination. There is a clause in that line under that option 1 that says for any reason. I would move to strike that for any reason in both of the policies. And just to keep it that sick leave that is not used during employment would be lost and not paid out to the employee upon termination. Personal days, so each employee out of that allotted sick time would have 4 days of personal leave per year, which if not used would be charged to their accrued sick leave, right? So if they did not use those days, they would be able to accumulate and bank those days within that 720 hours. So the major shift in the policy, it would be moving from all leave being categorized as personal time off or paid time off to being sick leave, designated sick leave with 4 days being used for personal leave. Any questions?
So this is in, I'm gonna go first since I opened my mouth. Sorry.
Mhm.
2 different policies. The policies are identical except that they relate to 2 different categories of employees, right?
Yes, so the 3000s relates to our teaching staff and our 4000s relate to our support staff.
And then administrators who have individual contracts, leave is defined by those contracts, not by these policies.
That is correct. Those days of leave are also indicated within our handbook for transparency and they are in alignment with the days that they receive as well.
Okay, I like this model. I like where this is headed.
Yeah, so
It's a good balance.
yeah, so my recommendation would be to the board would be to rescind the 2 the two policies and then accept, and then approve the revision, the revised copies with the one strike of, for any reason.
Got it. Okay, should we do we wanna go around and ask questions first, or should we go with a motion first? And just roll it all into discussion? Well, let's go around and ask questions, because we're gonna have to have four separate motions, 2 rescission motions and 2 adoption motions, right? So, okay, Chris, any questions?
I wanna clarify just a few understandings.
Yeah.
Medical or dental appointments for the employee or their family would count under sick.
Mhm.
And if somebody were to attend professional development, that would not count in this.
No, any professional or school directed activity would be considered to be school business, which does not count towards
Okay.
personal time off or sick time.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
And then I've been thinking about this a lot, and I just had one thought, and I like the way I like the way it's written, I like that it's sick, and then you can take a certain number of personal days. I wondered about a staff person whose kid was in a different district with different break schedules. And I wondered what the implication of 5 days instead of 4 days would be. So if, for instance, their kids had a different spring break, they would not have to arrange childcare for 1 day, if that's how they took their personal leave. That was just a thought. I don't know what the financial implications would be, but that was just a thought that I had.
There would not be financial implications because that is, I mean, they are allotted that time, so they could take that time. I think the implication is on student learning in our district, right? Having a teacher not present, but if that's something that's planned for in advance and we can work for, like I would prefer a teacher use that PTO so that we could secure a sub who's of quality, who knows the students and can have lesson plans in advance. Because not having a teacher present for a week is a big loss for student learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is an issue.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thanks for this, please. Dave? Karen? Questions?
Yeah, so with regards to part B where it says illness of close relative or member of the household, it's entirely like, what if it's like, how do we define close relative? Because I think in the handbook, we actually are pretty generous with how we define what might warrant time off. So, for instance, like what if it's someone who you are helping to take care of, but you're not actually related to them and they don't live in your house?
I looked at the way the policy was written and shifted some of the language in the handbook. I just wanna go and take a look at that, what exactly it says there, so we can make that cross-reference. I think it's a member, the way it's written in the policy is member of household or significant.
It says illness of close relative or member of household.
In the policy.
No,
it does.
the handbook though, which is
Oh,
kind of the question.
The handbook, right?
Yeah.
I do have a question on mine.
Okay, 1 second, let me answer this one first.
That's funny.
But that's always the handbook overrides.
No, it has to
Policy
be.
has to be a stipulation.
I don't think that's a good.
I changed in the handbook for it to align to our policy, sick days may be used to care for the illness of a close relative or a member of the household.
So I guess,
You have to do personal care. Someone else.
and I might be misremembering our conversation, but I felt like we had, I think, moved in a good direction with acknowledging that in this day and age, sometimes we're caring for people who are not legally related to us or blood related, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm just a little concerned that this language might be accidentally prescriptive to self-limiting.
I can see that.
Um,
Is there a language recommendation you would make?
that's a fair question.
And that's where.
That's the caveat,
That's the
right?
caveat, right? Like,
Is
I mean, you can do the slippery slope argument, right? You're sick. You're my dear friend, and I'm like, I just wanna take you a meal for lunch. Should I be able to use sick leave for that?
I mean, there's.
If you have other people who can do that for you and, have job obligations.
Yeah,
Can
and
I
to be,
use
and I'm
sick
glad that you put it in that perspective, because that's not how I was conceptualizing that. I was more so conceptualizing that as a dear friend with no social network
Right,
who needs it, who needs someone to go with them to the doctor,
right.
right?
Where my
Also
heart
good
goes,
personally.
where my intuition goes is that's where having a strong superintendent who's accessible makes a difference. Like if you had a situation where you're taking on a primary care, like you're the executor for someone, you're their trustee and you have a obligation or whatever, you go talk to the superintendent, your principal, and you say, listen, I've got this unusual situation, because there is flexibility, right? Built into our handbook to talk with you
Yeah.
about use of PTO and leave.
Well, we're talking about.
No, she said she changed the handbook to match. this.
That's for sick days.
Oh.
That's for sick days. For personal days are allocated separately from sick days within the
I get that,
Skyward
right,
mom,
right,
You don't
right?
need a reason, you just.
So sick days, you either fall under it or you don't, yeah.
would it be too broad to say something? Or for someone for whom you have caregiving responsibilities?
Or perhaps we just add illness of close relative, member of household, or otherwise prearranged with your direct supervisor.
That's personal.
I admit that I'm comfortable with this language. I think the rest, it opens doors that are hard to navigate in policy. But
guess when you-
I would need to think.
I guess one of the things that I would determine is like close relative. In my mind means someone that you have a close relation with, like I'm not gonna ask for like.
Birth certificates,
Eh,
test.
Right, so like if you have an adoptive neighbor that is like, you consider a close relative and you're saying I'm going to care for somebody, I mean, in my mind. In my mind, that some of that can be interchangeable in terms of context, but I understand that when we write things into policy, we wanna make sure that we are protecting. Our institution as well as our employees, right? And so I understand where the concern is, right? And I guess without I wanna make sure that if that's not in there, that there's a similar language that defines some of those parameters, right?
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Culturally speaking, my sister has a lot of cousins who are not her
Yeah,
cousins.
yes.
So close relative, I mean, the way it works is someone puts a request into Skyward to take sick leave.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of discretion and in terms of just like self-reporting here that goes into it. And the main concern probably is more like abuse of sick leave or running out of sick leave or like somebody not feeling like they could care for someone close to them, which I'm like, I guess I'm.
And I understand that, but then I also would look at like the Family Medical Leave Act and what we
Right.
define as like somebody who would maybe running out of sick leave and would need to take more time. There are parameters about what you can use Family Medical Leave Act and who you
That's
can
what
care
sick leave
for
is
around
for.
that.
Yeah.
And so I do think I would have to go and look at that, but I believe it's somewhat in alignment, but like even if your family medical leave is there's a lot of definition around who you can and cannot take off for within that policy, which is federal and state policy, right?
And the backup is personal leave. I mean, if you're gonna take a neighbor to a medical appointment for an hour or 2 hours, you can use 2 hours of personal leave if it's important to you. Right? I mean. I think sick leave is sort of. In policy meant for. This definition and like FMLA and those very like sort of. Less culturally accepting parameters, but still.
Yeah.
That's a
Less
good
community
question.
based.
It's a hard question, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Stunningly, when you Google language of FMLA, it's way too broad a question.
No, FMLA is like 12 or 13, I mean, it's
I
different
imagine,
than
right,
Yeah.
grandmother, grandfather, brother, I mean, it's
Right,
like.
even if it doesn't always apply to adult children,
Right.
it's, yeah, there's a lot of.
Biological,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I just want it noted, I do feel like there's,
Mhm.
I can appreciate that there's a sense that that could be personal leave. As a public school employee, that would rub me the wrong way. I think,
So how is it, like, when you say as a public employee, do you have reference to language in your own handbook that would say otherwise, I guess? Or
probably not.
something different?
That's
So I
a good
mean,
question, yeah.
I mean, I don't wanna be put in the position, like, I understand what you're saying, I
Right.
completely agree, but I also
Yeah.
wanna think about the fact that as we're writing policy.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, like, if we're gonna say that's gonna rub somebody the wrong way, I wanna say,
Right.
but how's it written in policy where it doesn't, right?
I think, for us, we'll put that up house, right up to a deadline.
I mean, even member of household can be interpreted. You know, I could hypothesize a world in which someone is so closely engaged, embedded in my family, a friend who we support each other financially or whatever, that I consider them to be a member of my household. Right, that becomes then a matter of personal ethics, whether you put it in as sick leave. Or whether you put it in as PTO, because I don't think folks are looking over each other's shoulders, right? In this schoolhouse. To say how you're using your leave.
Right. Is it called personal leave in this policy or personal days?
Here it's
I
called.
know it's PT, I feel like, we're kind of shifting language, right? Like we're moving to sick days,
Right.
we're not,
They're
we're getting
calling
it.
it, this policy calls it personal leave.
I feel like I would just maybe ask us to start reference, I don't know, I'm trying to think about it.
This policy would have us move away from PTO.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying, it's
Sick
not,
leave,
right, and
Or which can
personal,
be used for
personal.
personal leave.
yeah, okay.
So the handbook language for us, and this is handbook, it's not policy. Is immediate family member is defined as husband or wife, child, stepchild, brother, sister, half brother or sister, stepbrother or sister, parent, parent-in-law, step-parent, so it goes into
That's
detail.
FMLA language.
Yeah,
That's straight from FMLA.
So I guess I would, and again, this is our handbook, so if in our handbook, we're broader and helping define what the policy is
I
applying
would say
to.
it's broader to say close relative or a
Yeah.
member of household than to say what.
Yeah,
defines
sure,
the
husband,
husband,
wife,
yeah,
child.
yeah, it's much broader.
What about this? What if we keep the language as it, well, okay, I see you have it. If that's the alternative you're suggesting, you're talking about changing the handbook language.
I was saying that I'm looking up the handbook and that's the language that's in here. I can't look up our policy right now,
Oh, no,
is what I'm
okay.
saying. And so if, I guess that was
We
my
could revisit
question.
this though, if you wanted to propose changing the policy language. That's what I'm thinking. Like if you have a different idea that you want us to consider, I could bring it up again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the reason I brought it up is because. Again, when staff came forward to talk, one of their frustrations was that. What we as a board thought were like, of course you can do that, what's the big deal? They were like, we aren't allowed to do it that way.
Which I mean, if you're putting in a request for sick time to say to care for a member of your household, like, I'm not gonna go and ask you who that is.
Sure.
Right, like, in practice, that's not going to happen, right? So that's, I guess, the wondering that I have, and I look at the definition within your handbook, which is likely aligned to your policy. And I know, for example, the bereavement leave policy outlines who you can take bereavement leave for more in a more defined way. This is very open for somebody to say member of my household or family relative, right, or relative. So I guess, I feel like the policy actually creates the grace that you're saying it doesn't, and I would wonder, without a definition of how it could be worded otherwise, I don't know what to propose other than to table it and look at other policies and bring back other samples.
It's fine, I just wanted to bring it up for conversation, so.
Okay. Okay, I propose that if we were going in proper order, first we would see if we.
Wait, I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, you haven't
Yeah,
done it.
that was just her question.
I have a question.
Yeah, you can do the question online before.
Okay. Is there an incentive to leave unused sick days on the table? And then there's more. I've always viewed sick days as an earned benefit. So not receiving compensation for unused time feels like losing a portion of my hard-earned compensation. In my case, I accumulated over 1,600 hours of sick leave at my previous district, only to lose it due to circumstances beyond my control. It was truly a sickening experience, both emotionally and professionally. Thus, I have to ask, what is the real incentive to leave sick days unused?
I'm gonna say my real answer to that is I struggle with the fact that this is the way our policy reads, it's the way our current handbook reads, and we don't have a complete fiscal picture of how to structure that right now, so I have to leave the policy as is. But with that being said, my intent is to revisit benefits and pay schedules with teachers in the following school year to gain input on that. Michelle has already reached out to Foster to help us support our staff in understanding what some of those benefits could look like in terms of payout around leave, unused days, vesting schedules, and what is sustainable and affordable in a fiscal way for our district. But I also can't make that decision without that clear information and input from other staff members. So therefore, the policy needs to stay where it's at right now until we can provide solid information to make good decisions with. That's my answer to that question. Hopefully that suffices. But understand where the question comes from.
Okay, Danielle?
Can we also invite that person if they have any model policies from elsewhere? To certainly provide those.
Yep, and that would be part of the work that I'll do with this committee, is to really pull that together and have people look at models from other districts. And also have some of our experts who can look at our specific finances and lay some of that out. Because I think it's important for staff to understand that structuring and incentivizing of unused time also comes at a cost to the district when people leave or terminate or retire. So we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that is also something that we can fiscally sustain.
Danielle?
Okay, so, the first time you brought this to us, you had like, feedback from the teachers union. Was this specific policy revision like vetted by them, or did they offer any additional feedback, or is it just that feedback that we've already received that?
The feedback around the policy based on what I shared with them is what I shared with you,
Okay.
and so that is the feedback that I received from them.
Okay.
And I think at that time, when I had spoke with them, I was looking at eight days and 2 or something, or maybe it was like 10 days and 2. So
Okay,
we actually increased the personal time off, which I feel like is a healthy compromise in the middle to
Okay.
meet their requests to be able to have some flexibility.
okay. That's good, and then. Right, we had talked earlier just about like the way that this can be used in terms of like in hourly increments to create flexibility, and that's half hour,
Mhm.
right? And that's all laid out in the handbook,
Mhm.
right? And the other thing that you talked about that I didn't sort of understand this policy is that there are like blackout days for the personal leave, right? So like, cause I was thinking about accountability for this policy and like, how does personal leave, like, is it gonna be, how does a supervisor know to grant or deny? And so Anna helps me understand that like generally personal leave is just going to be approved unless it falls under a blackout day. Certain days they can't do it for PD or edge of vacation. And then it comes down to sort of like staffing concerns, right? Like you get multiple requests on a day. So that helps me to kind of like think about accountability and equity. And I think that it is in line with the flexibility we want to give staff. So that's it. Yeah, I like this policy. I think it does the best we can.
Yeah.
For teachers and staff.
Just a point of order, we need to clarify who it was that asked that question and get their information.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
address and
Name and address of the comment.
In the public comment.
okay, you can do it in the chat, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, I get
It's gonna be in
the
the
email
minutes.
addresses with the transcript.
Well, do you want to say it for the record?
You always have to have, I mean, if you're in person, you have to state who you are and your
Yeah, can you
address.
state their name and address?
Okay, can you state, oh, here she goes, yeah. Michelle Young. You want me to do the rest? The address?
Yeah, just.
521 North 50th Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208.
Thank you.
So, you're done?
Yep, done.
Yeah, I appreciate Ms. Young's comment. I have been thinking about that, and I'm glad you clarified, Anna. I'm glad to know that you're already starting to plan out discussion with staff about this stuff. I also am always interested not only in incentivizing people to not overuse sick leave with pay, but also with leave share. And I would love for that to be part of the discussion, whether there's a way to meaningfully implement some sort of leave share policy without too much fiscal impact on the district.
And then-
And because I also think that's really community building.
That's been an ongoing request of the staff to look
Yeah.
into that and look at models around that, so I do think that that will be part, I mean, to me, is part of the
Right.
discussion.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things to take note of, and when I, you know, visited the handbook with the board in relationship to this policy, is that we don't have, like, when we look at like retirement benefits and things like that are offered to people, there's, you know, in many districts, a lot of those things have been pulled out. And so like in our district, after 2017, in other districts, the date varies. You start to see like kind of a removal of post-employment benefits, right? Those are very costly, so it thinks about like what are things we can do to help support our employees with some self-funding. I think like taking the step to ensure that our people can accrue enough sick time to cover themselves is a really important aspect of being sure that our employees are in a good space.
Yep.
I want to make sure that we walk with that in a way that there's clear understanding from our staff that the decisions that we make are going to be fiscal decisions, but they're also decisions that are going to be about making decisions that impact them with the most care that we possibly can to, and collaboration.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, anything else, Bordees, before we move to motions? And we can discuss further during motions. So I think the right order to do things is, oh, sorry. Mr. Martin.
Nice nonverbal language.
It was the plan under the chip.
A few questions, I'll try to keep it somewhat quick. Is bereavement a separate policy?
Yeah, staff are afforded 5 days of bereavement.
Then in the personal leave charge to sick leave, it says the use of personal leave is conditioned upon approval of the supervisor in advance notice. Is there clarification on how much
Advance notice. Typically, we're fairly flexible around that. We would want people to put in as much notice as we can, and I feel like our staff does a pretty good job of doing that just because they want their students and classrooms to be tended to.
Then last one I'll just have as a comment is I would echo the thoughts of having paid. On termination, and just the way I would look at potentially funding it is, at least this past month, there was about $30,000 to teachers on call, and just potentially take a look at a rolling average of how much has been used when there wasn't, paid leave on termination getting paid out, and then as you do, if you do end up amending policy to allow teachers that leave to have sick leave paid out, just say it's $20,000 that ends up going teachers on call versus 30,000, put that separate $10,000 into an OPEB fund for teachers each month and just do that on a monthly basis, and that way you'd have it paid in throughout the years. That's my
Good thinking there, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Martin. Anything else? All right, so I would start with motions to approve the revised policy before rescinding anything.
Smart.
So if anyone wishes to make a motion, first adopt, then rescind. So I think we should go one at a time, right?
Is there,
You can't do a motion to rescind and if they rescind that one.
in one also, so it's just one.
You could. Yeah, we've already had a lot of discussion, so yeah, you could.
And is there a reason we can't rescind both and adopt both, given that they're identical, except for the people who say pushing?
Go however you want. If it was me, I would, for a clean record, adopt the policies in one motion. And then rescind the policies in a separate motion. But if you wish to craft the language and speak it, then I will serve as your amanuensis and write it down.
We're just revising.
Motion here is to approve recommended revisions.
Right, but the clean way to do it is to adopt the revised policy.
Well, our intent will be clear on the record.
Regardless.
Just waiting for someone to make whatever
Okay.
motion you
Okay.
want to make.
I move. Dear God.
Uh-huh.
Alright, I move to rescind policies 3432, 4432, and adopt the revisions as proposed, with the exception of removing, of striking for any reason under sick leave not paid out, for the proposed revisions of 3432 and 4432.
You don't second anything yet. Let's stay friendly, because you just proposed rescission of policies and then proposed revisions to the policies. that you're-
Adoption of the proposed revisions.
Right, but what are you, but you're proposing adoption of revisions to policies that you've just moved to rescind. See the problem?
Which is why the recommended action is just to approve recommended revisions. Policies.
Right, but if you move to rescind the policies,
Let's
then
not
there's,
motions to make.
then
I'll
there's
make it.
no policy to make revisions to.
They're right, I mean,
But the way it's worded,
Right, I mean, just in a happenstance that somebody doesn't get passed, right? You don't wanna like appeal, but I guess that is a good question. I mean, Danielle's point is reasonable. These are revisions to existing policies. Can't we just not?
so you could make a motion to revise the policies as written.
well, that's what the recommended action is, but I'll make whatever motion.
Typically, when we do revisions, we usually, if there's that much
We
change
do
to them,
rescind,
we tend
yeah.
to rescind and then readapt because the language is significantly
you-
changed.
Yeah. Okay,
So you would want to adopt the revisions and then rescind with the other two.
Well, you want to adopt the revised policy.
Yeah.
Not the revisions. You want to adopt the revised policy, then you rescind the old policy.
But if you've adopted revised policy, you're not,
yes, this is a
anything.
cyclical argument, but.
Yeah.
It's
Just,
technical.
yeah, what we
it's a
wanna do is
technical
adopt a new policy and get rid of the old, for the record. Whatever motion we make, will
Alright,
matter because we're.
So I will reframe. And rephrase, I move to adopt. The revisions
Oh,
to
yeah.
3432 and 4432. With the addition of striking for any reason
Yes,
after the sick leave not paid out. On both policies.
So again, before you second again, so what that's gonna
Just
mean,
give us the language.
no, that was right.
no, just so I just wanna be clear, what it's gonna look like in our policy then is the adoption date is gonna stay the same. And then you're gonna say revised on, you don't change the adoption date then for the policy,
Right.
right? That's just gonna be the only difference. We're not gonna be adopting a policy as of this date. It's gonna still have been adopted on June 18th, 2024. With the revisions that were adopted. The way you've worded. it. So that's fine, as long as
That's right.
that's what you intend to
What
do.
the recommendation is.
So the bottom will say revised.
Okay,
Yeah, that's right.
yep, all right.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Nobody discussed.
Any further discussion, Chris? Katie?
I just wondered if I was the only one that thought a move to 5 was reasonable.
Oh.
Oh, the 5 days of
I
PTO.
asked that, I asked that.
You said that
You did-
before?
You did ask that.
Oh, I didn't.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
My view is that
Yeah.
4 days, my view is that 4 days of PTO is reasonable. I feel, but I'm open to argument, to being convinced.
Isn't there something in a different policy, or am I misremembering that like teachers have to have a pretty exceptional circumstance to take a whole week off regardless?
No,
That's
that's old.
old.
Don't
That's
bring that.
old, okay.
That's gone.
Okay.
Yes.
I have to admit I'm with Carla. I mean, I appreciate that that's a really, that's a very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And considerate way to look at it.
Mhm.
And also 5 days of PTO means you effectively get a week
A
of
week off.
vacation.
Yeah.
And that's not the intent of the PTO.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Chris. I didn't hear you say that.
And I apologize that we didn't address it.
No,
it was a
it's
good
okay.
question.
Thanks for the reminder. All right, any further questions, comments, thoughts? All right, the motion is to adopt the revisions to policies 3432 and 4432. Motion by Karen Grunwell, second by Danielle Bailey, all in favor? Aye. Any rescind or oppose? Motion carries. And then-
do you want a rescission?
No, because you guys, there's nothing to rescind, you go through them. If you rescind the policy now, you just don't have the policy.
I can rescind it.
I moved to do this all over again.
So I don't know where you would note the revision date. For me, ideally, it would be at the top. Where it says adopted, but I guess Neola will tell you how.
They usually do it at the bottom.
Neola will, once I give them the revised copy, they'll publish it and they'll do the revision date probably when they shift. They'll
Okay.
shift it on there and they put it where they put it, like I don't.
You don't tell them.
Okay, all right, I hope Neola is. Well, I'm just curious whether, because Neola uses this rescind and replace model, so. I assume they have the capacity to do this correctly, because we did not rescind and adopt a new policy today, so it has to keep the June 18th, 2024 adoption date. To be accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's anything that comes back from Neola, then I will let the board know and we can revisit it.
All right, 6A, recommended approval, revenues, expenditures, payable.
It work.
Okay, attached to the business office executive summary are several reports for the month of May. Board policy 6231 calls for listings of expenditures and appropriate financial reports to be submitted monthly to the school board. To keep you informed of the status of the budget and financial condition of the district. The attached reports are to inform the board of the financial transactions that occurred in the month of May 2025. First report, and there's a summary here, is the fiscal year 25 revenues and expenses by fund. The linked report is more detailed. It's broken out by fund and shows the revenues and expenses from the start of the fiscal year, July 1st, 2024 through the month of May 2025. The report is summed up by the 3-digit revenue source and the 3-digit expense object. The report is directly from the district's financial software Stagward. And then showing on the summary is each fund, the fund name, and the 24, and I see a typo here, 24-25 budgeted revenues, and then fiscal year to date revenue, that's the actual through the end of May. And then the 24-25 budget expenses, and then the fiscal year to date expenditures. And then the next report is May 2025 accounts payable disbursement checks. Get your totals here. There is an item on the check register that part of it is blacked out to protect student privacy. And the total of this report is $856,625.84. That includes $507,198.05 from the balance sheet. A credit for revenue account $2,607.89, and then expenditures of expenses of $352,035.68. And then the next report is a summary of the pay and benefits and disbursements from July 2024 through the end of May 2025. And that report shows month by month what the gross payroll is, gross benefits, and then retiree payments, HRA payments, annuities, and other retiree insurances. Then the AP checks that are not related to payroll, in the ACH payments, and then loan repayments. The total amount for the month of May was $1,573,782.50. And then you'll the report, the May 31st, 2025 bank balances showed the cash balances in each of our accounts by fund. The asset total was $7,543,675.34. Any questions? Any of those reports?
See, where are we? Pardon?
The questions.
Danielle? Carla? No, got nothing. Chris?
No.
Katie? All right, start with a motion and then we'll invite any public comment. Anybody have a motion?
I remove. Okay, no.
I know we're saying this, huh?
I recommend approval. Oh my God, I move to approve revenues, expenditures and payroll records for May 2025 as presented.
Second. Oh, great. Any further comments or discussion from school board members? Only thing I've got, Michelle, is thank you again for always being clear and precise and thorough. I appreciate it. Anyone from our visitors?
Just one this time. Yeah. On the AR report, there's a source one technology for the vendor, description round E-rate fiscal year 26 switch for 51,000 some. What was that for?
That is part of a technology project updating our infrastructure. There are several switches and other items in that piece, and you'll probably note that that is coded to an asset. It's a prepaid expense that is coded to. You're welcome.
Okay, there's a motion by Karen Cronwell, second by Chris Robinson to approve the revenues, expenditures and payroll reports as presented for May 2025. All in favor? Aye. Any recuse or oppose? Motion carries. On to item 6B. Delegation of authority to assign fund balance.
Right, so board policy 6235, for the fund balance, the board needs to delegate the authority to assign fund balance they pay. We would be recommending that they delegate that authority to assign fund balance to the superintendent, and really the purposes of this is to assign the money to an account so that it can be used for further fiscal needs as required by UP, and this is required by Wisconsin DPI.
Is there a motion?
I move to delegate the authority to assign fund balance to the superintendent.
Second.
And any discussion? Katie? Carl?
So this is really just reflecting the fact that our policy does not have this in it, and it is DPI required to have an assigned individual who can do this, and therefore we're remedying it with this motion.
That's correct. Some policies identify their fiscal manager or the superintendent within the policy, and we do not. So based on that, the board has to delegate that authority.
Yeah, and this gives us two people. So for instance, our fiscal manager could not designate themselves and not tell anybody.
That's right.
There you go.
Danielle? Well, I admit I'm a little confused by this. Should our policy be revised then in some way to reflect the delegation requirement? Or do we just do this every year, or do we just do it once? The delegation.
Any assignment of fund balance would need to be done by June 30th. So if, as the year end hasn't closed yet, we don't know what that dollar amount is that we would need to assign, so delegating that allows the superintendent to assign that when that dollar amount is determined, as opposed to bringing it to the board and
Right.
asking you to assign X dollar amount, which could be past that deadline.
Right, so that's what I'm wondering, just thinking long-term, should we be considering revising the fund balance policy to contain the delegation?
You could,
That would be an easy way. Yeah, cause we would,
unless you wanna just do this every year, cause I'm fine with that.
yeah.
I feel like as long as we're this sitting board, we don't need it, but if we
Yeah.
start switching out, someone might want to know why that's happening, and then this brief discussion is.
Well, the worst case scenario is there is no delegation and you just do it anyway. Right, whereas if it was in the policy, we wouldn't be able to, a violation of DPI requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think it would make sense to revise the policy in a future date, just so
Yeah,
that
just-
it's just so we're covered and nothing.
Yeah, just something,
accidentally
not a
overflows.
priority, just something
Yeah.
to think about, not directly related to the
Yeah.
motion itself, but that's what.
We'll have some upcoming policy revisions as we move into the fall,
Yeah.
so we can look at, I could look at asking about how to revise that as well.
Chris? Okay, so there is a motion by Karen Cromwell, second by Chris Robinson, to delegate the authority to assign fund balance to the superintendent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, or what's the other thing, recuse or abstain?
Abstain, no, that's-
Motion carries. Thank you. Let me write this. Already, sorry. Well, my hand isn't writing. All right. Moving on to item 6C, 25-26 budget.
So in your first documents is an updated sheet, very similar to what you saw in May. The actual budget for adoption, budget and adoption format is exactly as you saw in May. The budget assumptions, as were stated in the budget hearing, September FTE 960 per pupil increase in the revenue limit of $325. Per pupil categorical aid next. 742, federal grants, no change, for the different funds. Increase in lease agreements at Good Hope from the fiscal 25 actual. No change in percentage of categorical aid in Fund 27. This document here is as corresponds to the adopted budget, if the adoption format. With a tax levy of $16,133,597. That would be a mill rate, if all projections hold true, of $6.42. The revenue in Fund 10 would be, $19,158,335, expenses of $19,438.99. $438,099, for a deficit of $279,764, leaving an ending fund balance of $5,648,021. And then this is the chart showing those different years, the current and the future budget year that we're talking about. And then the revenue by source in Fund 10. And then expenditures by object for Fund 10. And then the fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. Again, currently, we're expecting to end this year at 31.03%, and then the next year's budget projected to end fund balance at 29.06% of expenditures. And then on to Fund 21, through Fund 80. Fund 21, again, revenues and expenditures of $45,000, for an ending fund balance of $18,191. Fund 27, revenues and expenses of $4,552,344. Ending fund balance 0, and then the debt service fund revenues of $1,085,838, expenses of $1,087,275, for a deficit of $1,437, an ending fund balance of $43,140. And with the debt service fund, when we're building that budget, the levy is for the calendar year. So what we would levy for in this budget, those revenues are to cover the payments made in 2026, not like this fall, but the spring and the fall payments. So that's why those don't match up with the revenues. The expenditures, and the expenditures we're budgeting for October and March, April payments. Capital Expansion Fund 46, budgeting revenues of $6,500. Food Service Fund 50, budgeting revenues and expenses of $471,612, for an ending fund balance of 0. And I go back up to 46. I neglected to state the ending fund balance. And Fund 46, projected to be $226,085. And then the Community Service Fund, revenues of $365,000, expenses of $450,823, a deficit of $85,823, and for an ending fund balance of $2,149,055. And currently, the current year, we have not reached expenses up to that $450,823. So that would be to cover things that, something goes wrong. There's a cushion built in there for contingency, those expenses. This would be an all fund tax levy of $16,133,597, with $15,048,084 being for the general fund tax levy, and then $1,085,513 to the non-referendum debt tax levy. And then again, showing the levy and mill rate projection. If you can click on the preliminary, that first link in there, up near the top, preliminary. It's the preliminary 25-26 budget and adoption format. Oh, okay.
Cause this is Jenica's.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I can do it for our friends at home.
What are we looking at?
So if we go up to the link at the top on the first page, it's gonna give us the published version.
Right. The adoption format.
Here you go.
Okay. Yeah, so this is showing, this is the exact budget that the board approved in May, and this is in adoption format, what was in the paper and also attached to the hearing, I believe. But I don't want to say that, in the paper was the publication format. So this is broken out by fund, showing the 23-24 audited year, and then the 24-25 year still unaudited, we're not complete yet. And then the budget, preliminary budget for 25-26. Showing beginning fund balance, revenues, expenditures, and then what that ending fund balance would be. Breaking out the revenues by local revenues, transitive aids, between districts, outside of other school districts outside Wisconsin, and that has just changed, and I need to check on that. That language has just started to change because we're not receiving money from outside Wisconsin. Intermediate sources, transitive aids, and then state sources, and then federal. Other financing sources, and then other revenues, and then going into the expenditures. Breaking that out into instruction, support services, non-program transactions. So that is a lot more detail. And then the interfund transfers, instructional service payments, the majority of that is payments for the voucher schools if we're making payments there, and then also payments, open enrollment. And then
Am I in the
just to
right spot?
keep score. So scrolling. And then the special projects fund, showing that, that's broken out. Instruction, support services, non-program, and the majority of that, that's all budgeted for instruction. And then special education fund, shows the transfer in. And then there's a lot of these that are blank, but I didn't pull them out just so you can see what, payments could be, revenues. And then, state sources, you see the categorical aid. Special project grants. And then other federal revenue through the state, that's, the Medicaid funding. And then, continuing on expenditures, for Fund 27. Majority of that is in the 150,000 function special education, curriculum. And it's not just curriculum, but that's staffing as well. And then we have our support services, non-program transactions. And then on to the debt service fund, and that's showing, the beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, and then the revenues, and then the activity, the types of expenditures, the types of debt that's broken out between long-term capital debt and operational debt, and then other long-term general obligation debt. And then one thing that was not on this in May that I did update was that bottom line where. Scroll back up a little bit, next page. Yeah, right at the bottom of the page is the indebtedness at the end of the year. And then the capital projects fund, the revenues there, no expenditures yet, and then food service fund, and then fund 80. And that is the budget.
And that's the specific document that you're asking us to.
That is correct.
We're being asked to approve this preliminary budget. The. I just noticed the agenda says approving the preliminary budget for the June hearing, but. We did that in May. This is just approving the preliminary budget, right?
Yeah, that's.
Okay, let's start with a motion. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the preliminary 25-26 budget.
Second?
All right, discussion, Danielle.
Yeah, just, I think 2 questions. So, I'm sorry if I asked this at the last meeting, but so you said for Fund 80. The actual revenue last year was 400,000, but that's not accurate. Do we know what the accurate revenue was? Did I ask that? I think I asked that last time, but maybe.
Give me a minute, I'll let you know where we're at right now.
Because you said we haven't met the 450 either, so I'm just curious about the actual revenue list.
You mean for 23-24?
What's the middle column? Apologies, 24, what year are we in?
We're currently 24-25.
Yeah, so currently, the current red.
That was a true question, so.
The 24-25 budget, we had budgeted revenues of 400,000 for Fund 80. And where we're at right now is at the end of May, 285,954.
285.
Right, so that would be all the revenues received up through May. So we really are only expecting June
One more month.
revenues, yeah. So we're not gonna meet that, so then, yeah.
But okay, so maybe. Closer to 3, or like
Mhm.
3.
Right.
Okay. Okay, which would mean an increase in revenue, truly, for next year. Okay, all right, I just wanted to kind of figure out how much that was. Okay, so going to the non-program transactions, expenditures. Like item 410, 430, 490. So in this current, like
yeah, 430. In this current year, we had an estimated 550 as an expenditure for instructional service payments. And for this budget, we're looking at for 25-26, it's cut in half. I'm just wondering what the, okay, I'll let you get there.
You're
Yep.
looking at revenue?
Yeah, no, expenditures, sorry, so 430. Last year, the last 2 years have been a little over 500,000
Instructional.
instructional service payments, and it drops by 50% in this budget. I'm just curious if you can talk to that.
Yeah, definitely. This is the piece where we're no longer using Americas.
Gotcha.
And we're going to be paying them as salary, paying them as
Oh,
employees. So that is the savings there that you're seeing, part of that.
no, I thought it- thank you. Not only if I was
welcome.
looking at- Then can I ask one more clarifying question? Which of these columns or categories represents then the projected transfer to voucher and charter schools?
And that was gonna be my question.
Because I thought you pointed it out and now I.
Yeah,
confused
if
about
you
which
go
one.
back to the Fund 10,
Okay,
Which line I wouldn't say.
near the bottom. Right before total expenditures and, I'll go up a couple more pages.
Okay.
The next one at the bottom, no, the next one, I guess. Right there. If you look at the bottom non-program transactions, you see the interfund transfer and then right below that instructional service payments. Those are payments
Oh, that's
for
why I got
open enrollment and then those vouchers.
1.85 million.
Yes, and the state is taking this, not the open enrollment, but they're taking the other pieces. No, I think they're taking those other pieces during the year. So when we're scheduled to receive aid, we see a deduction, they've reduced it because they're already collecting those revenues. Expenses
okay,
from
so
us.
that's, okay, but this budget is pretty much predicting a similar expenditure.
It is.
This- Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome, and those are the amounts too that we don't know the exact amount
Right,
until
right, so
October.
best you can do is
Mhm.
base it on.
Yeah.
What was in mind. Then, sorry, one more, when you were looking at, full-time FTE and enrollment projections in the hearing. Somewhere in here, it listed 2 SNSD, like,
Mhm.
2 for SP that the state assigns to us. Does that mean those are 2 resident students enrolled in a different, like, district or school?
They're
under the
enrolled in
SNSD?
the special education voucher schools.
Okay, so that's 2 resident children.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, all right,
So they put that on a revenue limit and then
okay,
they'll take it from aid.
Okay.
After we levy for it.
Okay. that's all I got.
That can fluctuate. Yeah, that might, yeah,
Okay,
that can fluctuate.
well, that's right, but it's right now, it's,
Mhm.
just gonna say it's holding. Yeah, okay.
On the sped vouchers, I'm curious why you identified those specifically, but not the number of regular ed vouchers. Is that like a technical requirement or?
The reason I did that is because those special education vouchers are actually on our revenue limit and part of that FTE. So when we're calculating our revenue limit, they're taking into consideration there.
Oh, is that not true for?
That's not true for the
Oh,
others.
really? Oh, I didn't know they treated them differently that way too. Okay. Do you know how many regular ed vouchers are included in that number?
I think there's probably about $700,000 worth.
No, how many students?
No, I don't. I could calculate that based on.
You would have to back
Yeah.
calculate it.
Mhm.
But we know for sure we have 2 students using sped voucher. I just find that so strange, you know what I'm saying? That it's just the different way that we get information differently for different kinds of vouchers, just. It feels like they're trying to hide. What's going on with regular ed vouchers while outing sped vouchers. So everyone knows we're losing money to sped vouchers. It just feels like another form of just marginalizing and stigmatizing sped students. And it drives me crazy. It just, between us as a cohort, it just makes me crazy. I know.
that next year.
I have one other question. You asked my, Hold on one second. I'm working through this my best. Like, I wanna say, Michelle, that, the confidence I feel as you go through this stuff month after month, I feel like I'm actually learning. I have fewer and fewer questions because I think I'm understanding things better. I am so profoundly appreciative of the way you bring this to us. That's what I feel each month. It's like a little bit more relief. A lot more confidence, so. All right, that was it. That's all the questions I can find. Thank you. Chris? Katie? Lauren?
More so just for the general audience who chooses to look at our recording. The increase of from 1% to 8% in the general aid is due to the fact that our property taxes actually technically fell this year, correct? And so
That is correct.
why we're getting that additional benefit, so to speak. from the
Property
state.
taxes or property value?
Property value.
Property value,
Thank you.
and then also, there's a portion of that too, where. Our students, so as our resident students go up. Then. Our property's values go down, we look. Like we have less value per student, so that compared to the state. Also put us in a category too, where we would get more state aid.
Okay. And then I did have a question around, so we had been carrying a fund balance in our food service account. We are no longer. Is that a way of us just recognizing that we are losing $1.5 million of tax levies, so we're not planning a fund balance in the food service, or is it not necessary? Is it just not a budget item we need?
I believe we had the fund balance due to, during COVID, when meals were free.
Mhm.
There was a lot of, there were more students probably taking those meals, and most districts built up a fund balance during that time. So then, once that was no longer there, then we started eating into that, and then we had some equipment issues and repairs this year. And we did code those to Fund 50 so that you could see what those are, and that took the rest of that.
Sure, but I guess my point is, there's no reason to have a fund balance for food service, like there's no best practice that would suggest we should.
I'd have to check on that. I think it could be, because if we have the equipment needs, or repairs. To plan for that.
Because otherwise it comes out of Fund 10 if we go.
Right,
That's
that's why
right.
I was like,
Yeah,
I
I
was
see
the
what you mean.
balance,
Yeah.
I was
Right.
wondering why.
Yeah.
I will say, for whatever it's worth, while I understand we are not quite covering our costs, I think it is extraordinary that we are only looking at having to spend just under $250,000 when we are losing 1.5 million in referendum dollars. Like, I think it's extraordinary you've been able to figure that out in less than a year.
Yeah.
With no previous reliable record recently. So props to you.
Yeah.
One thing I also wanted to know too is attached to this, I believe, is or to the agenda item is the budget calendar.
Yeah.
So it does break down those funds. I know we wanted to make sure that the budget includes all of the funds that the district uses.
Awesome.
Gotta X some things out.
Yeah. All right, there's pending a timely in our annual calendar, finally a timely motion to approve the preliminary 25-26 budget, motion by Karen Cronwell, second by Danielle Bailey, all in favor.
I don't know. It's
I know.
Chris.
Oh, was it Chris?
It was
Yeah.
Chris.
What did I say? It's Chris Robinson, sorry. Motion by Chris, second by Danielle Bailey to approve the preliminary 25-26 budget. All in favor? Aye. I heard 5 ayes. Motion carries. Thank you, Michelle. It feels so good to do that on time and.
It feels really good to have a budget proposal that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, that we're not like, wait, what, that doesn't actually
Yep.
add. It all adds, I like that.
Huge. Moving on to meeting closing, board preview and planning, 2 big meetings coming up. June 20, is it 26 or 25?
26.
June 20, that's a Wednesday, right?
Thursday.
Next Thursday?
It is a Thursday.
I think we moved something because of some.
I thought it was, I've had it on both dates because I've been confused.
I also did have it on both dates to
I
do.
don't
I
have
think
the
we
travel
had that the
plan for
25th.
Like, let's confirm that.
Yes.
What works better
Who's
for
gonna be
everyone,
there?
if I can make either night work, I noticed it was on a Thursday on my calendar, so I was like, okay, we must have settled on a Thursday, 'cause that's what I meant.
Right.
Remember just.
And I thought we had
That
settled
was
on a
Wednesday.
Wednesday after we had talked about it Thursday. Can we all do the 25th?
If we can do, if everybody can do the 25th, I'm fine with shifting it to the 24th.
Or do you prefer
Yes.
it the 26th?
the 25th. Yeah, the 25th. I still have it on my calendar, the 25th.
Okay,
Right.
how about you, Chris?
Hang on a second, I'm just here.
Because Thursdays you tutor is what I remember.
No, not in the summer, and I actually have it written on the 25th.
Okay.
So we must all think it's on the 25th.
I thought it was on the 25th too, and then I noticed that it was on my calendar for Thursday, so I thought I had missed something.
Done it.
I have a feeling it was an early discussion, but,
Okay.
all right, 25th at 6?
Yeah.
All right.
I had it on the
and-
26th and I crossed it out on the 26th, so.
Okay, well, at least there, you're not the only one who got a 26.
I already have it on the school calendar, like,
Yeah.
I only have it based on.
It's on the 25th, is that what we're saying?
Yes, 25, Wednesday.
Alright, that's where it is.
Is
And
it
then
on the
that's-
school calendar there too? Okay.
So
Yes.
Anna, our fearless leader, has this mapped out. We're gonna meet on the 25th. And we're gonna do board-centered refresher and sort of big picture work. And what we're doing is preparing for the meeting on the 30th, which is a workshop with administrators together to look at data and do goal setting and planning for the next year. So it's really, really exciting, Anna, to have you leading this in a meaningful way to drive and guide our work. So Anna will be leading the refresher on the 25th. And I have 3 questions to propose. I can email these to you. But also I just want to speak them tonight because we got a week and I think we can each just sort of sit and stew as we get ready to do some actual planning, right? And these are the 3 questions I think we should stew on. What does successful and coherent board leadership look and sound like?
You're gonna email these, right?
Yeah, I know, I just wanna like.
I wanna hear it, just double checking that I don't need to try to write.
You don't need to write it down. Unless I forget, but I don't think I will.
Okay.
2, what are appropriate boundaries between board leadership and administrative leadership? So those big issues that is, you know,
bear trap.
the dialectic, so, right, sit and stew on that in the coming 6 days. We don't wanna get lost in like, I know what I would do if I was like posed with that question in meeting, I'd be like. Right, and then 3, this is the good one, this is Anna's question, what is our moral imperative?
In what way?
What is our moral imperative?
Oh my God.
Oh, no, there needs, as a school board, thank you, like, I mean,
Yeah,
I.
of course,
we need to
of
bring
course.
it well, no, like as
As a
teacher,
human.
as a human, as a-
Well, it's a big question, it's an interesting question, it's for stewing. I'll email you guys, but you know, these are the stew questions, so we can do our dreamy stewing and then come into the meeting next week and focus. All right, so
I would just add to that list, that in 2 days, we have a deadline to get feedback.
okay, so I'll try to email you guys tomorrow morning. We have until Friday to give handbook feedback.
But then,
Put it on for
And-
tomorrow and then put it on for the next day too.
4th of July parade is coming up. Katie, you had mentioned equity committee wanted to make signs.
Yeah, they're working on it, and I honestly don't know how far they got with it. But if they have signs ready and available. So the goal is to have these signs so they can bring them to future events and stuff. Their ask was that if I would ask if everybody in this room is okay, if the signs are ready July 4th, if they have them and then parade with us.
And
What are
they're,
the signs?
It will be, they're thinking lens on one. Non-negotiables on the other, and they're hoping to get a QR code that people can scan, that will take them.
Flyers?
could you say,
We're not allowed to.
we're
do
not allowed
flyers.
to,
Really? I
Yeah.
get like weird.
But
okay.
in future events, they would do
Stuff
flyers,
out.
but at the parade, they cannot, but they just wanted to make sure it was okay with.
Do they want us to
Or-
hold them or they're gonna
well,
walk with us?
how do we strap them on, right?
Yeah,
front and back?
Bobby's thinking he will carry a sign, potentially, in the parade with us,
Oh, great.
or we can attach him to the vehicle. if they have,
Okay,
I don't know if attaching to the vehicle will work.
yeah, I don't know,
That's not our vehicle to.
no.
So if they wanna do it, they would have to come carry them, because we're gonna be throwing candy.
No,
Handing.
Scattering our hand.
It's
handing,
gently handing,
handing.
that's right.
not injuring children. with
We're not allowed to throw candy either. That's right.
No sewing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slingshotting.
Okay, and then mapping ahead, I think with the equity committee, we're gonna put it on an August meeting to come back to this, cause we have some shoelaces to tie. After the December meeting, when we approved it, we never came back to discuss, cause we needed to approve membership and never did. And we needed to, there's another part of the policy that says we're supposed to define specific activities and topics, and we didn't come back to that, so we never.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the sort of,
I watched the meeting. It was murky.
it was murky.
Cause we had
Yeah.
asked to sort of either hone in specifically or like, I can't remember, but.
Anyway, we never voted on membership, so it's,
we need to do
we have
more.
not met policy requirements, so. I'd like to come back in August and just discuss it, and that's a good time, because by then we will have set goals for the year, and we can talk about the role of it in advancing our goals for the year and all that kind of stuff.
So will you send an invite to the equity committee, to like?
I think
No,
I will,
anytime to use like.
I don't even know. who's-
Leadership right now is Javier and Jenny, so I would.
I can
Send an
email,
email.
or I can email you, Katie, and you can.
I
We'll
would
figure it
say
out.
that,
Of course, we'll.
because I'm not,
I just say
as
now.
for policy, I'm not, I'm just kind of the go-between, I'm not.
No, you're an ex officio member.
Right, but
policy also.
I'm not comfortable being, like, I can, be the go-between, but I'm not comfortable. To me, that needs to go to leadership, but I'm not leadership, that needs to be go.
Just let inviting them to the meeting is not.
I can invite them to the meeting, but I feel like it's also super easy, or to have Anna do it, just
Yeah.
to send an invite.
It's fine. But I don't really know who's on the committee other than Javi and
Yeah,
Jenny.
They're
'Cause
the
I-
two who are in running, there's only 5 of us that have shown. But, just like the PTO and the foundation, it's a very small group. Which is how I find myself in this position, but. Yeah, they're running it, Jenny is kind of, they're co-heads.
Yeah, and it's just a board drop that we should have voted on membership, then we've known who the committee is made up of, but we never came back to it,
We'll
so
rectify.
we will rectify.
It speaks to the need.
Yes. Okay, so we'll follow up on that, and then is there anything else? Planning, thinking about meetings ahead, summer stuff?
Can I just say happy Juneteenth tomorrow? And there's King Solomon, if the weather's good, is playing at Maslowski. And I'll be there. It's just like a community event that might be a good place to see family and friends and stuff. It's like part of the Maslowski music in the Glen or whatever, so I would. It's usually 6 to 9 and it's, there's families, kids, if Sprecker's open, if the weather's good, it's just a good place to be. I guess I could wear this shirt. Anyway, just
Also,
a
it's my
community
wedding,
engagement.
it's my wedding.
Happy
anniversary as well. Just in case that matters to me.
Come and I'll have you renew your vows.
It's like 800 years.
Okay, anyway, I just thought that's another community opportunity to show up at. I'll be there.
Anything else? Anyone, any more events, any more places we wanna be? Super excited about the planning workshops. Can't wait to see you guys again next week. One more agenda item.
Oh, yeah, actually, it's June 18th, King Solomon.
No, they rescheduled it because of the
did?
rain.
Okay, we
Proactive,
did that.
thank you.
Oh,
That
good.
makes sense, I'm like.
They did it yes,
Yeah.
they moved
Yeah.
it in advance.
They
No, I
did
know.
do it,
Yes.
okay, I thought they were.
That's
moving it to
rumor.
August.
That's what I heard, so I'm passing on rumor.
Oh, good, yeah. Because
Sorry.
Item 8A on the
Danielle's
agenda.
from 6 days.
Me with a karaoke microphone. I will do it if they're not.
Item 8A on the agenda.
Move adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I get to?